very simple Bengali. And yeah, it's put in such nice poetry. Just I'll say a few lines so you can hear how sweet it sounds. So Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Jive Doya Kori Swaparshada Suya Dhama Saha Avatari Atyanta Durlabha Prema Kuri Baridan Shikaya Sharanagati Bakatera Pran Dainya Atmanivedana Goptritve Varana Avasya Rakshive Krishna Vishwasa Palana. And it also can be sung, but we've already done some kirtan, so I don't think it's necessary for us to sing. It's a little complicated. But so in our study of Sharanagati today, the song is very helpful because it actually discusses the different aspects of Sharanagati. Sharanagati, a rough translation in English also can mean surrender. But it's quite interesting because in English, generally when we think of surrender, it's not at the point where you have a choice to surrender. It's more or less you're up against the brick wall, someone's like, give me all your money, or, I'm gonna shoot you, or something like that. Okay, now I surrender. But surrender in the devotional path is a free choice. It's a decision that the aspiring bhakti yogi makes to surrender to one that's in more knowledge, or one that's more powerful. And by that surrender, one actually purchases or can obtain the favor of persons who are in more knowledge, like devotees or bhakti yogis, and they can help guide us. So it's an act of free will. It's an act of love that the devotee makes. It's nothing forced. Like someone can't put a gun to you and say, okay, now love me, love me, love me, or I'm gonna, this or that. It's just not possible. It doesn't work like that. It's a surrender of the heart. So in the first line of this poem, Bhaktivinoda Thakur describes a great personality called Sri Krishna Chaitanya, also known as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Let's see if we can all say Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
He's a very merciful personality that actually appeared in Bengal over 500 years ago. And it's described in our bhakti literatures that actually he came as an incarnation of Krishna. Because Krishna, if we read about Krishna, and we try to understand about his life, his activities, all those kind of things, it's very esoteric. It's very lofty, quite elevated subjects. A little hard for people of modern times to connect with or understand. It's very complicated. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he came out of compassion, which is what this verse is, Jive Doya Kori, to show doya, to show mercy to the souls of this modern times, of this modern age. And because Krishna himself, he's absorbed in enjoying pastimes, he's absorbed in relishing very sweet exchanges with the devotees, with his bhakti yogis who have achieved perfection. But out of compassion, he wants to help those that are, aren't perfect or are struggling in the material world. So it's a difficult, rough place here. So he comes in the form of Chaitanya to teach devotion, to try and help those understand how to reawaken our attraction for Krishna, understanding of Krishna so that we can actually become satisfied. So, like with a lot of things in life, we need a living example. If you go to medical school, you can't just learn from the book and then perform a surgical operation on someone. No one will feel very comfortable. Like, you went to medical school? Yes. And how long do you study? Oh, 2 years. And what did that entail? Oh, well, I read like a lot of books and, learned how to do these different things. And it's like, oh, have you ever, applied it? No. You're the first person. You'll feel pretty worried. I would feel pretty worried. So we need the book knowledge and also the practical demonstration of how to apply the knowledge. So Chaitanya has shown that very nicely. And in this poem, Bhaktivinoda Thakur shows us the sixfold path of Saranagati, the 6 main ways that are helpful for one who is trying to achieve that surrender in the heart. And he's done it in such a nice way because, for those of us that have experienced kirtan before, whether sitting or standing, you'll see it's very blissful, it's very sweet, and it's very exciting. Everyone likes it. It's dancing and chanting. In every culture of the world, that's an appreciated thing. So we, spiritualize it, transcendentalize it, and apply mantras. And in that way, Chaitanya is given a process which is simply joyful. It's very blissful, and it's actually described that it's not an ordinary sound vibration when we chant. I'm sure many of us here have experienced that you feel some deep cleansing in the heart, a deep sense of satisfaction that you can't get by, chanting Coca-Cola or chanting, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Mahamantra is a very spiritually potent sound vibration. And we can practically experience that ourselves. We don't just have to, blindly accept it. But if we just try it, every day or as much as we practically can, you can feel it in the heart, that the purification, the change of heart, a real sense of understanding more about who we are truly, more than just the body and mind and conceptions of the material world. So the first verse is describing about Chaitanya's compassion, and then the second verse is describing how he's come to give this love, or actually bhakti, another word bhakti is commonly translated as love. So that's quite nice when you think about it. Bhakti yoga, it's the yoga of love. Love for ourselves, love for all living entities, but we do that through loving Krishna, or the source of all living entities. And in that way, it's just like watering the root of a tree. You naturally satisfy all the branches, all the leaves, the root itself, the fruits, everything is satisfied by watering the root. Whereas if we try to individually satisfy each part of a tree, it doesn't work. If we try to water the leaves, then they don't absorb the nutrients. They don't grow like that. So by loving Krishna, all things are also shown that love, shown that care. And Chaitanya has described that this, what's called prema. Prema also is another word for love here. So this prema, or this love, is a very, very rare thing. It's a very atyanta and durlabha, very difficult to obtain, and very, very rare. And it's just like if you go to a store, and this is what Chaitanya has come to do. Just like if you go to a store and you see, a special diamond worth $1 million, and you think, wow, I really want that diamond. That's so nice. And then the store owner tells you, yes, today it's just special discount. We'll give it to you for $1. Who would like that kind of deal? It's inconceivable. So the compassion and the care of Chaitanya that he's come to give through his practical demonstration is just like that. It's a very, very wholesale discount. And so verse 3 here. So these 3 verses describe the sixfold path of Saranagati. So we'll focus on those mostly. And the first is called Dainya. So does anyone here know what Dainya means other than our pundits? Okay, our pundits also.
Humility.
Humility, yes. So humility, which is, even in mainstream culture now, humility is becoming an appreciated trait. When someone's humble, you naturally can appreciate their character, and you naturally want to hear from them. Whereas you notice if someone is very proud and very arrogant or very puffed up, there's in the heart just immediately there's a block. Like I don't want to learn from this person, because the quality of pride is it blocks knowledge. If one's proud, then you can't receive. So the great thing about humility, it's just like that. It's because there's another analogy. If someone's trying to give you something in your hand and you think that your hands are completely full, like I can't take anything more, then you can't receive anything that people are trying to give. But for one who's humble, they see that actually, I have very little, or I know very little. I have so much to learn. I have so much to gain in life and this journey. And for one that sees like that, they can receive so much. But if we think that, no, I'm good, I have everything, I know everything, I have everything, whatever, then, and we're blocking our growth, we're blocking ourselves. So it's nice to open up. And there's another nice saying, complacency is the death of progress. So for one who's complacent, if we're thinking that, I've reached the pinnacle, I've reached the top, I've reached, top of the mountain, I can't go any further possibly, I'm the best as I can be, then we invite death to our own progress, to our own growth. But if we always see that I can always be improving it each day, each moment, and really open our heart to those changes, which will be revealed in many ways by others, by ourselves, then we can actually, at each moment, life is fresh, life is new, and we can continuously grow, continuously progress, and keep that joyful spirit in life. You notice that with some very advanced bhakti yogis, they're always joyful. It seems like nothing gets them down. They're always very present in the moment because they have that open heart to improving, to accepting guidance from Krishna in everyone's heart. Sometimes he manifests different lessons through people, through relationships, or through circumstances in life. And if we're open to that, we can really absorb that, and we can utilize that to improve ourselves. And another important, so when someone's humble, it's just like the flowing of a river. Where there's least resistance, the river flows. So if someone's really humble, then knowledge naturally and very freely will come in whatever sphere. If you want to learn mridanga, the drum, or if you want to learn piano, or you want to learn mathematics, and you're very appreciative of the teacher, or you're very, really willing and able to serve and do what's needed, then naturally a teacher wants to give because there's no resistance. But if there's, you know, the blockage of pride, it's very difficult for that current to flow through. And yes, another important thing which many devotees say, especially I notice this one great bhakti yogi by the name of, his name is Radhanath Swami, has a nice saying, and it's that humility doesn't mean thinking less of yourself, but it means thinking of yourself less. So that means that doesn't mean, you know, thinking negatively about, you know, I'm not good at this, or, you know, I'm not attractive, or I'm not talented, or I don't have a nice haircut, you know, whatever it is. Doesn't mean thinking less of oneself, but it means to think of oneself less, to, you know, to think about our own needs or our own situation less in life, and to think more of others, to think how can I help others, how can I serve others, how can I try to do good for others. And this, you know, in the spiritual sense, also in the material sense, you know, we can do so many things to try and help others. And when one's absorbed in that service, trying to share the happiness, share the joy that we have in life, and it expands, it grows. There's another nice thing: what appreciates appreciates.
What you appreciate.
What you appreciate appreciates. So if you're constantly appreciating, meaning if you're constantly, you know, grateful and constantly seeing the good in others and trying to share that, then with yourself also it will increase, it will appreciate, will grow. So this is the first dainya, humility. The second is Atmanivedana, which means dedication of the self. So this is quite an interesting concept in the path of bhakti. Dedication of the self. It means that we understand that, you know, I came into this world with nothing. You know, I didn't have it wasn't just like born with, I don't know, gold rings on my fingers or keys to a Mercedes car or something. We don't have any of these things when we come into the world. And also when we leave, you know, we'll have nothing. We'll, you know, you leave, you come to the world empty-handed, you leave empty-handed also. So therefore, we can contemplate, well, then who does all these things actually belong to? You know, where does it come from? I mean, it was just here before me, it's here after me, I'm just passing through, so who does it actually belong to? And the Bhakti Shastras, they're saying, of course, that these things belong, you know, the energy of Krishna. And when one uses that energy for the pleasure, for the enjoyment and the service of Krishna, then it's used in its proper way. And oneself is satisfied, Krishna is satisfied, all living entities are satisfied. And it's just like if you're a bank teller and you're working at a bank and so many, you know, thousands of dollars come in every day and you're counting them. And so you may have a big stack of notes which you're counting for the bank, but if you take one note for yourself, you'll never have a job again, you know, in that industry. That desire for me, for mine, will, you know, create a situation where you have no more opportunity for engagement, for employment. So it's something to contemplate that, you know, who do these things belong to, and how can they be employed for the perfection of their use. And also dedication of the self, it doesn't mean that we lose our individuality. Sometimes, we might think that dedicating myself, but, I have um, my personality, my character, I have all these things, so how can I, dedicate myself? But actually it doesn't quite work like that. We don't lose our individuality, we don't lose our unique self, our unique sense of self. But actually, we all have our own completely unique, individual, and perfect way in which we interact with, with Krishna, with Supreme Spirit Soul, and that's the perfection of our self. That's a perfection of our position in material and spiritual existence. And the more that we practice bhakti, the more the heart gets cleansed of unwanted things, then we receive more and more pleasure and more realization in that loving relationship, that reciprocal relationship. Because our individuality in the material world, when we contemplate it, it's not complete, because the body is, in this life, this body is we have a relationship with it, just like we have a relationship with a coat or a sweater. May bring some, memories that, I wore that sweater for this and that and all these things. But, we know that we're not the sweater, we know that we're not the coat. And if the coat or the sweater, we lose it, or it's burned, or it's lost, or we don't, lament and cry and, oh no, my life is ruined, my sweater is gone. So there's some detachment. So similarly with the body, the material body, we can try and come to that understanding, we can try and contemplate in that way, and think about that. And so the third is Goptritre Varana, which means acceptance of the Supreme Spirit, or Krishna, as one's only maintainer. So one who's learned in the spiritual science of Bhakti Yoga, they understand that the material and the spiritual worlds, they're both comprised of energy. And the only difference is that spiritual and material worlds both are comprised of spiritual energy. But in the material world, the parts and parcels, the souls, the living entities, we have a desire to try to enjoy the world. It's very prominent. Even when we just walk down the street, there's so many things we see. It's like, I want that, I want that, I want that, I want that. I want to enjoy so many things. But in the spiritual, that sense isn't there. That's the sense, only desire, the only sense is to please the Supreme Spirit, the Supreme Soul, Krishna. And so it's nice to think about where does our maintenance come from? Because the body that we have right now, it needs food, it needs water, it needs shelter, it needs so many things just to keep it together, keep it, in one piece. So it's nice to think about, well, where does this come from? Where does my food come from? It doesn't just come from Whole Foods or Trader Joe's, or it doesn't just appear on the shelf and we go and just take it and come back, and that's it. It's a lot goes into it. The food comes to Trader Joe's in a truck from a farm. And that farm, there was a farmer, he planted the seeds, and then there was rain, there was soil, there were so many different aspects to this simple thing that we often take for granted when we eat a loaf of bread or so many different things. And if we think about, well, where did the rain come from? Where did the earth that grew the food that we're eating come from? Where did the air come from? So many different things that we often don't take, we just take for granted. So this is part of acceptance of Krishna as a maintainer, and it naturally generates a sense of gratefulness, just like our father or our mother. For so many years, most of us, 16, 18 years, they every day feed you and make sure you have clothes and money for going to school or doing different things, trying to keep you happy. So Krishna's even more kind than that, because he accompanies us throughout the whole life. Not even throughout the whole life, but throughout as many lives, as many different bodies as we've been in the material world. So he's very very kind, never cuts off the supply. No more bread, no more rain, no more air for you. So, and part of accepting Krishna as one's maintainer is renouncing one's sense of proprietorship or ownership of the material world. Seeing all energy that's there, that we're not the possessor of the energy that's being there before us and will be there after us. So there's also a nice story. It's actually a Taoist story, which is interesting. Some of you have probably heard it before, but it's a nice theme of actually detachment in our life, in our interactions in the material world, by saying that, feeling that sense of maintenance or shelter from Supreme Spirit, that we can't necessarily in all circumstances see the purpose behind what's happening, but if we just have some sincerity and some Saranagati, some surrender, then we have a confidence, we have a sense of shelter that Krishna knows what he's doing. He's been doing it for forever, so he knows what he's doing. So there's a nice story. There's a Taoist farmer, there's a story of an old farmer, and one day he worked his crops for many, many years, and he had a son. And one day his horse ran away, and upon hearing the news, his neighbors came to visit. They said, "Such bad luck." "Maybe," the farmer said. The next morning the horse returned, bringing with it 3 other wild horses. "How wonderful," the neighbors exclaimed. "Maybe," replied the old man. The following day his son tried to ride one of the untamed horses, was thrown off and broke his leg. The neighbors again came to offer their sympathy for what they called his misfortune. "Maybe," he answered. The day after, military officials came to the village to draft the young man into the army, but seeing that the son's leg was broken, they passed him by. The neighbors congratulated the farmer on how well things had turned out. "Maybe," said the farmer. So this is a nice analogy that helps us to think about that. We don't always know. I mean, in a lot of circumstances in life, at least speaking for myself, the picture, the big plan is quite unclear. How things are, what's going on, how things are going to work out. It's very hard to see. How things that are happening in our life are going to unfold, and how the greater plan of our life is going to work out. But if we just have that, sense of trust in, our maintainer, then we feel very sheltered, we feel very safe. And I saw a really nice thing actually a few days ago. This also connects with the next verse of Akshara Shiva Krishna, which means trust that Krishna will protect one. And I saw something really sweet, very charming on the subway train when we were going to Manhattan to do kirtan. And I saw it was a lady with her, I with her son, and they're on the subway train, and subway in New York is crazy. There's so many different kinds of people, and some make you feel a little unsafe. And there's one or two such people in one of the subway cars, and they're saying all these things and acting all wild and all these things. But there was this little child and her mother. They were sitting right next to me, and the child was fast asleep, just completely, had like the most peaceful, blissful look on its face, because it was being sheltered by its mother. It was being cared for, and nurtured, and felt completely safe, completely protected, being with the mother, being with its shelter. So it's exactly the same way that the bhakti yogi feels with Krishna. They feel completely safe, completely sheltered. There's no concern, because one understands that my mother, my father protect me. Yeah, and being able to, practicing bhakti for some time, after a while one sees that actually whatever Krishna will do in my life, whatever obstacles are thrown, monkey wrenches, good things, bad things, whatever happens, it's actually will be what's best for me. But it's very difficult a lot of the times to see that in the moment. When we get a ticket for jumping the subway turnstile, or we get in a car accident, or or even good things. We win, I don't know, some prize or something like that. It's not always so easy to see that it's actually what's best for me. It's what will help me most in my spiritual journey in life. And so the last two, which are Bhakti Anukula Matra, Karya Svikar, and Bhakti Pratikula Bhava, Varjanangikar. First is accepting acts that are favorable for devotion, for bhakti. And the second, the last line here, fourth, is rejecting or giving up those things that are not favorable for devotion, not favorable for execution of one's bhakti. This is pretty common sense. I don't really have to explain it that much. It's just like...
Can you explain?
I'll try. Okay. So it's like we want to execute acts favorable to devotion, because if you love someone or you love something, then naturally you want to do what is beneficial, what's pleasing. Or, for example, if I love Jimmy and I know that Jimmy really likes halva, then I'll make Jimmy, some nice halva. And if I know that he doesn't like bitter melon, then I won't give him bitter melon, because the desire is to please. So it's just the same. Krishna is a person, supreme person. So there's things that Krishna does like, and things Krishna doesn't like. And so the science of bhakti, science of devotion, means trying to really apply our heart and our intelligence to understand what does Krishna want in this circumstance, what does he not want in this circumstance, and how can I act as an instrument in that way. And I won't go too much further, because we are coming up to time. Would be good to have some reflections or questions, but in terms of execution of acts favorable to the devotion, I'll just very quickly go to an important verse that, if anyone would like, you can always, in your free time, research it a little bit. You can see all of these things on Vedabase, vedabase.com, which has all of our books there for free. So it's a book called Nectar of Instruction, NOI, verse 3. And starts Utsahan Nischayad Dharyat. And the translation, it gives these 6 principal things that are favorable for the execution of bhakti, or devotional service. So, it's so nice to actually have this ancient wisdom, because it makes it so clear for us. You know? It just puts us right, right in front of our face. Well, how do I practice bhakti yoga? What do I do? What can I do to help? It's like, okay, here, boom, 6 things straight away. So there are 6 principles favorable to the execution of pure devotional service. First is being enthusiastic. Second, endeavoring with confidence. Third, being patient. 4, acting according to regulative principles, such as Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, which means hearing, chanting, and remembering Krishna. And the 5th, abandoning the association of non-devotees. Non-devotees means persons that are not going to be, or they're not interested in Krishna consciousness, and they're not going to consider it. They're going to try and pull you away from it, basically. So just like if you're trying to go on a diet, and then you're around the wrong kind of people, they'll they'll make you break your diet. You'd say, no, take the piece of chocolate cake, take the beer, take the whatever it is. If you're trying to not take something, you want to be in the right association. So that's what this means. And 6, following in the footsteps of the previous acharyas. So an acharya is a great spiritual teacher who delineates a system by which one can attain spiritual perfection. So following in their footsteps. So these are the favorable. And the very last one is, in this poem we're discussing, was renunciation of acts unfavorable. So again, this is quite common sense. If you're trying to stay sober, then you don't go to the bar and associate with the people there, because there's only one alcohol.
Teaching them about Krishna consciousness.
Well, you could do that, yeah, if you're strong, if you're powerful enough, you can do that.
Okay.
Lord Nityananda Prabhu actually would say, sometimes he would do things like that. He would preach to drunkards and try and share Krishna consciousness with them. So the final verse, this is from same book, previous verse, so Nectar of Instruction, verse 2, on Veda base. It starts Atyahara Priyasa Scha. And translation is, one's devotional service is spoiled when he becomes too entangled in the following 6 activities: eating more than necessary, or collecting more funds than required. Because these things create a greed in the heart. If we are eating, so much. Also, it's not healthy for the body. We become sick. But in the mind, also, it creates a sense of greed, that I always need more and more and more. I'm collecting more funds than required. So Prabhupada, our spiritual master who translated all these books, could often give a nice, funny analogy that a man or woman, they can only take 6 feet of space, or if you're taller, 6 feet 5, or 6 feet 5 space to sleep, and you can only take a few pieces of bread, and your stomach is full. So we can look actually how much do we really need, when it comes to money or things in the material world. Do we really need 5 different bungalows in different parts of America, and holiday home in Spain, and a jet boat, and like an ice cream machine in your house or something? Do we really need these things? So the second thing, which is unfavorable, is over-endeavoring for mundane things that are very difficult to obtain. 3 is talking unnecessarily about mundane subject matters. So we always want to keep the transcendental, spiritual vibration going, and it purifies the heart, purifies the mind. But if we hear things that are disturbing or contaminating for the mind, I'm sure we've all had that experience, at least I have on the subway. You're having like a good day, you're reading a book, and then someone just comes on, yelling and screaming, and it's like, immediately the mind becomes disturbed. So we want to try as much as possible avoid those negative or unhelpful vibrations. The fourth is practicing the scriptural rules and regulations only for the sake of following them and not for the sake of spiritual advancement, or rejecting the rules and regulations of the scriptures and working independently or whimsically. So atyahara and atyahara. So I'll just give a simple explanation of that. So we want to understand actually what we're doing and why we're doing it. We don't want to just be blindly doing something, blindly following something, but we want to have scientific, spiritually scientific understanding and trust that actually what we're doing makes sense and it has a goal, it has a purpose, and there's a process for achieving that which we can apply, we can realize it ourselves. Or the other side of it is rejecting the advice, rejecting the guidance whimsically, and just working according to our own thoughts, our own concoctions. And so the fifth, associating with worldly minded persons who are not interested in Krishna consciousness, similar to the last verse. And sixth, being greedy for mundane achievements, because oftentimes that creates problems when everyone wants to be the this is how wars start. When everyone wants to be the controller and the proprietor, then automatically creates conflict, creates problems, because everyone else, you want something, everyone else also wants it, so there's competition. So that covers the sixfold path of Saranagati, or taking shelter, surrender, bhakti. And if there's anything anyone would like to share, comments or questions on this topic, now is a good time. Very welcome.
I'm sorry, would you mind putting the shloka?
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Thank you.
Yes, Jimmy.
I was thinking, one thing that I experienced before, especially with reading about like spiritual qualities, good qualities and bad qualities, the tendency in my mind was to say, oh, look at these qualities, I have these qualities, these bad qualities, I don't have them.
Mm-hmm.
Or these qualities, trying to like force or like shape your false ego to say, yes, these qualities are mine. I think it's very troublesome. It's actually very bothersome. Thinking back on it, it's a very disturbing state of mind to be in. And every time I experienced it, it was very agitating, disturbing to the mind. I think that going over this, one thing that hit me was Danya, right? Just thinking, oh, like when you were saying, like humility is thinking less of yourself and thinking more of others. I was like trying to be like, okay, how would that quality be like? Like trying to fit my mind. I stopped right there and I thought, oh, actually I don't have humility. Actually I don't have these qualities. And the second that I understood that, I thought, oh, this is very nice. It's very relaxing. It's very sublime. Because you can read about these and say, I don't have these. I want these qualities. I don't have them. Please, Krishna, help these qualities appear in my heart. Please let me associate with the devotees who I can appreciate, who have these qualities, so I can also develop these qualities within my own heart. Please let me advance in spiritual life and devotional service. And right now I'm such a rascal. I have none of these qualities. I'm such a rascal.
You definitely have humility.
I'm such a rascal. I don't have any of these qualities, and that I want them. That I want them dearly. I think that's when we really start gaining them. But beforehand, right, there is the stage of trying to trick ourselves. Being an illusion and cheating ourselves into thinking that we have these qualities, or cheating other people, and being in this illusion. It's a very disturbing state of mind. I just thought that I just want to share that in case anyone has that, or if anyone's beyond that.
That's powerful. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Yes, it's, I think everyone experiences that at some point when, with any discipline, but especially with bhakti. Like, for example, I remember when I started practicing mridanga, the drum, you know, you just expect to be able to pick it up and like, be like mridanga bomb, you know, #1 or something. But it doesn't work like that. You know, you have to, the first step of learning anything is humility that, oh, I don't know anything, you know, I don't even know like where to put my hands, I don't, you know. So the first step in any act of learning is that acceptance of the reality that, you know, I don't know this, and I need some guidance, I need a teacher, I need some help, you know. So yeah, but, and also you said something really nice about often we try to like trick ourselves to thinking that we do have, you know, certain skills, or we do have certain qualities, or we try and like force it, you know. But it's like, you know, that desire is good, that we want to have these qualities, we want to do these things, you know, we want to learn, you know, the drum, or we want to learn Spanish or whatever it is. You know, that desire is good, but we also have to mix it with the 6 favorable things that we discussed, like patience. You know, like if you have a green mango, nothing you can do in the world that's going to make it ripe faster. You know, you just have to wait. You just have to give it time, and you know, naturally things will progress. They'll proceed, and we'll achieve what we need. But yeah, the first step is we can't trick ourselves to think that yes, it's a ripe mango. You know, now I don't need to wait. Just
Yeah, I was thinking that's so sweet. It's such a sweet moment when we understand how limited we are.
Mhm.
How when we're faced with that brick wall, we realize no matter how hard I punch, I'm only just going to break my hands.
Mhm.
That I can't do anything here. And then we cry out for Krishna or for other people who can help us. And it's so sweet to take shelter. It's actually one of the sweetest experiences.
Yeah.
I think in my life, one of the sweetest experiences I've ever had is taking shelter. Taking shelter of advanced devotees, of the Maharajas who are here, of the books, right, of Krishna, and just saying in the moment, I can't do this. I'm a cheater. Look at me. I'm trying to be the controller. I'm trying to be the proprietor. I'm trying to be the enjoyer, but I can't. I can't do any of this. Krishna, I'm such a rascal, such a fool. Please let me just take shelter of your lotus feet. Or when I get chastised, or like Hari Chandra Maharaj will just give me a look. I just take shelter of that look, and I say, okay, I'm being a fool right now. Let me just take shelter of that look, and then it's so sweet, because the truth is that we're tiny little jivas. We can't be the controller. We can't be the proprietor. We can't be the enjoyer, no matter how hard we try. But what we always can be is this tiny little jiva who's taking shelter under, who's a particle, a dust particle under the lotus feet of Govinda. Right? We can always be this tiny little jiva who is completely dependent, Prakriti, completely dependent on Krishna, on Purusha, right? On the actual person, on Krishna. We can always be dependent. We can always take shelter, but we can never be the controller, the proprietor, and the enjoyer. And then when we get away with that cheating mindset, there's like big like level of tension. It's like bottled up, like this bottle of suffering. It's like huge wave of suffering that's just building, just. And it's like, okay, so I can't do this. I can't do anything on my own steam. I can't do anything on my own intelligence, my own strength, because that's cheating. I must be completely dependent on these higher power, on the higher power, on Krishna.
So it's a really nice realization to have, because especially in modern times, it seems that more and more there's so much pressure to be perfect, you know, in every way. You know, perfect dressing, you know, perfect behavior, perfect hairstyle, perfect job, you know, all these things where there's so much pressure on us to be perfect, and it creates such a burden on people's consciousness. It's actually a lot of suffering, you know, this intense pressure. But when we have that simple act in our heart that we accept that, look, I'm is not perfect, you know, I mean, then it relieves so much of that, like you said, a huge burden, you know, just huge weight is lifted, coming to that point of acceptance that I'm not perfect, but I'm trying my best, you know, and that's all we can do. And it's actually, it's a freedom. It's not a degrading thing. It actually frees us, liberates us from that expectations from those things. Have anyone else who would like to share anything or ask any questions?
It was good if people remembered something nice.
None of my pronouns.
The one thing I remembered was that you're saying, like, if you're humble, then knowledge can flow. And I always remember that, like, something can, like, if you're pouring water from something else, it always, the thing that, the vessel that's going to accept the water has to be lower than the other thing that's pouring the water. So,
That's nice.
what did you remember?
I don't even remember everything.
From the last song,
Just from anything today, yeah.
what did I remember?
Or like a reflection, something that you thought.
I don't know, I could probably tell you at a later time.
I'm like that also. A lot of times it comes back, it comes like, oh wow. As soon as I'm somewhere else, all these fun things flood back into my mind. Okay, so if there's nothing else, maybe we can go to short kirtan.
I like the six qualities though for the advancement of Krishna consciousness though, you know.
Yeah, it's nice that, as I was saying before, it's nice it's so clearly put before us, you know. We don't have to like think and, you know, discover and try and like speculate about, well, what can I do, you know, it's like you got the cheat sheet for the test, you know. Just put it right there before you. What do I do? Oh, that's what I do. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, I'll try and do those tonight. So, you know, if anyone would like to see this song at a later time, you can just look up this part, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Proprietorship.
Isn't this actually the first song in a
Sure.
whole book?
Yeah.
Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote a whole like albums and albums worth of songs that are all describing these different 6 aspects that we just can briefly reflect on today.
Yeah. This is the book Saranagati. And this is the author, Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So, yeah.
Could you sing a little? Sing some
Oh,
bhajan.
put me in the spot.
Sing some of the bhajan. Sing some of the bhajan for us. Actually, we'll probably do it here because we have the verses. Do you think we could do call and response, or just
Most people are not first timers here, and I think maybe we could get away with instead of.
If you'd like to try it, I mean, it's Bengali, so it's a little bit more complicated than Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, 16 anyway.
we could do the bhajan and then we could do Maha Mantra? Do you think that would work?
Yeah.
Very slow. Very slow.
Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Jive Doya Kari Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Jive Doya Kari Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Jive Doya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Jive Doya Kori Swaparshada Swiyadhama Sahaya Vadhari Swaparshada Swiyadhama Atyanta Durava Prema Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.